Hey now, everybody. Welcome to the show. I am SimpleJack from Nation 30. Today, the topic will be about mergers. Before we get into it, let me introduce the rest of the team. Let's see here. World 285, we've got Lumberg. World 524, we've got Matty D. And we have from 373, Woody. We're having a little bit of a technical difficulty with him, but we'll see if we can get him up and running soon. But I'm sure that'll happen soon. But wanted to get started, get into the room about mergers, and it's a very focused discussion about number one, what are some of the goals that when your nation has been given a merge, what do you shoot for, and then what are some of the strategies that you take to reach those goals? Once we go through the room, we can probably go into some warning signs about exactly what could be happening that could turn your merge into a not so favorable one. So let's go ahead and go through the room. Matty D, I know that you had a merge not too long ago. You want to go step through some of your goals and some of your strategies?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is communication, just getting everybody in the same room and on the same page. Um, our merger was fairly different than most other nations. What most other nations do is they kind of divide up the map into one thirds, one section for each nation of the three that's merging. Well, we kind of put everybody in one room and told them or kind of moved them into the different alliances, and we divided up the map by alliances. We split it up 5 ways. So
Okay, split up the map. So one of the things that you kind of alluding to is essentially when you guys learned that you're going to merge, you got all the leaders into like a group, right? Like Viber or Line or something like that, Discord. And then you guys started planning this out, right? To take the map, split it up into sections. And like from there, that's where you physically get into the AOO game and then actually make some of the changes, right? So a key part is communication. A key part is actually starting that chat group where all the leaders from the different worlds kind of come together. Do you guys have a way of how you determine who comes into the room?
it was a difficult decision. Most of the time, it was the big players at first, and then we opened up the Discord for everybody in the nation to kind of get them all in one place. We are using Discord, and the only way to do that there is really to purchase a translation bot. So we set up translations across 10 different languages that happens automatically. So we kind of got to know everyone across the three nations, about a month in advance. So
Oh wow, so that's good. So you guys were really game planning for quite some time. Sounds
yeah,
good.
and the other thing about how we divided up the map is we looked very heavily at all three nations, and we tried to find the one with the best void record. Um, we were all pretty good across our three, but two, the one with the best benefit buildings and layouts. We finally decided on 524, and that was because it gave the top three alliances all max benefit buildings. So that's a huge deal in our decision on the world.
Yeah.
And
So, and it kind of goes along with what we did when World 30 merged together. We actually split it up amongst four, and then we split up all of the uh, buildings amongst three alliances, and then we essentially told everyone that no one could build until the three top alliances, did their sprawl and grabbed all the buildings that they needed to. I think it's like 20 per alliance, just to max them out. Then
yeah,
that really kind of helps, because you're going to have rogue alliances that are not going to follow suit. So they're going to want to do their own thing. And that's where it's key for those top 3-4 alliances to kind of work together to make sure you kind of squash anything or anybody that does that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had a couple of rogue alliances, nothing major. They were all, pretty low level, but all of the main alliances set them as enemies, and we burned them. I mean, when you have the whole nation burning you kind of realize you don't have a place in this world because they did not want to move to a different alliance, and it is what it is.
Yeah. So Lumberg, I know that your merge was just announced, so congratulations on that, number one. But do you have a merge date? Is it the end of March?
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, that's right. It's going to be March 31st. We are super excited. Excuse me. It's going to be 261, 270, and 285. This is our second merger. We are in the middle of talking things out, discussing nation priorities of events, nation rules, and then, then moving on to alliances in an area. I think Matty mentioned the tool and setting up Discord probably in the ideal way and probably the baller way, right? Translation in Discord is not cheap. I used to hate Viber because it required your real cell phone. But if anybody has a cell phone in today's day and age, you probably get a bunch of spam messages and calls anyways, so you're probably not going to be too far off. I highly, highly recommend Viber. So I installed it as a result of this merger. Some of our partners used it. And it has a long press to translate. So any language, you just long press and then translate, and it's free. So if you want the poor man's merger planning, that's Lumberg, use Viber. So that's going to be my tip of the day. And just like Matty said, Matty's probably like one of the far off in terms of the planning and the coordination. It's hard for other nations to kind of do that, especially when, they don't have their act together as well as, let's say, Matty does. But, communication and just, the same skills that apply to you communicating with your coworkers, with your family members, with your kids, all of that is relevant in a merger talk, right? So the basics of kind of, keeping it very respectful, and not flexing, right? Flexing leads to all kinds of problems.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a difficult thing too, because there's so many different personality types, and they but they sometimes collide, right? So everybody's going to want to kind of dominate. And so the key thing when you guys get together, when you guys start your talks is, just, calm down. Everybody's tough. Everybody's cool because, that's one of the reasons why you're getting merged, but there's no reason to flex. Just relax. Everybody has that, interest in mind. But tell us a little bit more about some of the strategies that you've taken so far, Lumberg, with this new merge coming.
Yeah, so some of just in terms of, you asked a good question of who you bring into the conversation. I think it's really important to, based on your merge partners, to find a common language. People that are bilingual are extremely important in not getting into misunderstandings with translation. No matter what tool you use, translation is going to be a challenge. So when you kind of choose your leaders, you're going to have your 4 or 5 major groups, right? We all know kind of the big groups are, Koreans, Japanese, Americans, Europeans, and these are kind of your big buckets of players that really, really spend money and that are the top players. And then you have everybody else, right? So kind of keeping that in mind, you want to bring in a leader and somebody into the room that has a common language with, let's say, the other world leaders, because it just makes things smoother.
Yeah. You don't mind me bumping in about the whole Viber thing. I know we're backtracking a little bit. So there is a way that to where when you first start a room, you can set it to where no one's phone numbers or information are set, or no one can see it either.
There is a way to do that?
I did not know that.
Yes, there is a way to do that.
Yeah, I knew that was a huge hang up for a lot of people, that they just don't want to join groups because they don't want their personal information to get out. So that's good to know. Can you say that one more time, Woody?
Yeah, sure. So when you join Viber there and you join the group, a new group, the person that makes the group, you can set it up to where personal information such as phone numbers are not shown, but it has to be set up when you first make the group.
So the person that creates it. All right, that's good to know. I did not know that. That's cool. So I have to take that forward.
Yeah, and back to the Discord thing. The translation is not. I mean, it's expensive. It's running me about, I think, $75 a month. Just because we're translating so many languages, but it's not that much, in the grand scheme of things. Because as much as people are spending on this game, when you merge, that is one of the most important aspects of anything. Because if it's done incorrectly, then you can, if it almost feels like your spending is in vain, right?
Yeah, sure. So Woody, now that your mic's up, awesome. So with 373, how many merges have you been through?
We've only had one merge. We are looking to get a second merge, but it won't be happening for a little bit. As Caddy says.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's a good point. So you got a message from Caddy that with GC starting Global Conquest, there's not going to be any mergers. And I always felt that was always the case because Camel doesn't like to do a merge during GC because essentially, GC, they're all brackets of worlds fighting. And if you merge a world during GC, you kind of remove some of the worlds from a bracket, which essentially makes that bracket a little bit easier for other worlds. So it's kind of unfair. So I always felt that they did that on purpose, not to merge during GC. So, but that's good to know that you got from your VIP that they're saying that this March 31st is probably going to be the last set of merges until GC, at least until GC is done. So good information.
No
hey,
problem.
Kitchy.
No problem.
Hi.
What about you, Kitchy? I know that you were in 320 before, but now you're in 425. What kind of merge?
Yep.
What kind of merge stories do you have?
The 321 was a merge between 297, 310, and 320. So I was central to that, and what we basically did was we merged with alliances that we thought were culture wise and how we run things. That's who we actually merged with. So a lot of the Asians, the Koreans, the Japanese, and well, more or less the Asian timelines, they all merged together. And the ones that are kind of international alliances, they merged as well. Which was okay at the start, but again, egos and stuff like that get in the way. So after 6-7 months, it kind of got divided, and then after that, it just wasn't pleasant.
Yeah. So Kitchy brings up a great point. So when all these worlds come together, and I've seen this, I've been through 2 merges, and I've seen it a lot where as soon as the merge happens, they either change hands, meaning people go from one alliance to another based on cultures or based on, timelines or time zones. And so it helps the world if you can do that because you're grouping a lot of players together that can play at the same time. But it doesn't always work because, number one, not everybody gets along. And so if you lump people together like that, you still could be lumping people together that they might be playing at the same time, but they just don't get along. So they're not going to really feel it in that alliance. So it's definitely something you have to think about because we actually have that problem now where we're always trying to push to group alliances by time zone, but a lot of players kick or push back because they want to play with the people that they're used to. They want to play with the people that they're used to spending with, and if you move them into another group, then the dynamic completely changes. So time zones is a great idea, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Yeah, I mean, and your big players, your players that spend the most money, they typically want to win. That is their goal. So, they're more willing to move into like a number one alliance, a super alliance, if you will. It's a lot of the other players that seem to be really locked in, at least based on what I'm seeing in my merger. All of our top players instantly wanted to go to number one, except for maybe one, just because he wanted to lead the another alliance.
I've noticed with the nations that I have been in, I know this may sound racist, but there are certain cultures that kind of tend to band together, and you see that in every nation. It's like there's certain cultures that just don't want to actually open themselves up to other players, or they don't want their like they always have this, I guess, mentality that they're going to be misunderstood, or they're going to misunderstand others as well. So I don't know.
I've actually seen both, so I do see that cultural line sometimes, and it's kind of a shame that you see it, but people are who people are. But to Maddie's point, I think money trumps everything, and that's kind of the bottom line. When people want to win, they're going to want to play with players that spend, regardless of their nationality. So that's kind of how we formed up. Where our main alliance is grouped across all time zones, but it's really based on some of the players that really want to win, and you can tell because of the way they spin. So it's difficult to, when you merge so many different nations, to find that super alliance that Matty D was referring to. But the bottom line is that your spend typically dictates that, and then you'll find that the pieces afterwards kind of fall together, whether you have two other huge alliances or three other huge alliances. The pieces kind of fall into that.
So along those lines of building that, super alliance focused on, whatever the nation wants to win on, you have kind of people from three different nations that are used to kind of running the show, doing things, calling the shots. And, part of them enjoy that and part of them wants to continue that. What would you say are some tips to make that new environment successful? Because, you basically have, three different leaders. Some people might say, I'm tired of leading, right? I'm tired of doing the organization, and are happy to take a step back and let somebody else do it. But what are some of the tips from having successful super alliances that you would recommend people do?
Can I say something about that?
Yeah.
So like Matty was saying, when you first merge, it is the utmost important to get that super alliance right off the bat. Because like for say 373 right now, our nation's split up, meaning all the big cities are in different alliances, and the longer you wait, the longer it's going to take before they join. They don't want to join. Now they're comfortable, it's like their family. So if you don't do it right away, it's going to be extremely hard to do it later on.
Wow, Woody, I didn't realize that. So in your nation, all of your big cities are split up. That's crazy. I thought everybody was kind of, took the lead like in RNG.
RNG's got the most biggest cities, but I mean, you got all the other alliances that's got C38s, C37s, C36s, and it's been too long to where they don't want to come to RNG. They've made their home already. So that's what we're fighting right now, and eventually it will happen. We all know that, but if you don't do it right off the bat and you don't kick it in the butt, it's going to be extremely hard to do it later on.
Yeah.
See, with what Woody said, like a 320 started with bigs in two alliances as well. and that was okay for like the first 3 or 4 months. But when some of the bigs from one alliance noticed that there's more participation from the other alliance, then they started moving across, which was okay if it was actually communicated to everyone. And if it was like an open discussion where, like, I like the participation in the other alliance and stuff like that, then it would have been an easier, I guess, transfer over. But because there wasn't any, then it just went to shit basically.
Yeah, and back to SimpleJack's point, what does it take to be successful, or how do you lead that? First and foremost, you've got to find somebody that is willing to put in the time, because it is, for that merger week when it actually goes down, it is a full-time job. I mean, I took a few days off of work just to coordinate the crap. And then you've really got to be able to delegate. Lean on players. There's players you don't know from other worlds. You've just got to trust that they can take the reins and kind of do the tasks that need to get done. I mean, it really is almost like running a small business, except you've got 50 different countries across 15 different languages, and that just makes it that much harder.
So, have any of you guys, as soon as the merge is announced, the leaders get into the chat room, have any of you guys encountered where it's just not going to go well? Everybody's not getting along, and a civil war is going to happen as soon as everything comes together. Have any of you guys experienced that?
Mm. No.
Sounds like you may have, Kitchy.
No. I'm trying to recall as well, but no, I think it's like any relationship. You kind of have this mask or guard, and you want to present your best self to others, which I think, like in every other relationship, is the wrong thing to do. It's like, if you're blunt and you're honest and you're things like that, that's not something that you should um hide from the others. It's because at the end of the day, if you want it to work, then there shouldn't be any masks to hide from or hide behind. So I think it's better if it is, outright, this is me. I'm blunt, I'm straightforward, I'm a straight shooter. I don't like this, I don't like farms. Like, if you lay it out on the table as it is, then at least there's a way to compromise, instead of like, oh yeah, that sounds right. It's like, no, that's no.
I'd have to say the first sign that you're gonna find complications with is you got big guys from different nations, and everyone wants to be the big guy of the nation. Like, every nation here has the one person that rules the whole nation. I mean, you guys can call it dictator or not. Like, in 581, it's boss, and then in Matty's world, it's probably a great one. In my world, Bram. So they're always going to have the really big guy, and they're going to try to, listen. But when you get a whole bunch of nations that don't got that huge spender, well, it might be a conflict of who's stronger. And that, if someone's going to sit there and say, well, no, we're not going to do it your way, we're going to do it our way, you already know right off the bat it's going to be a civil war, because it's going to be a power struggle.
Yeah. So I have a funny story. When I merged, I was in 45. We merged into World 29, and communication was, this is probably 2.5 years ago. So, everybody kind of has a blueprint now on how to merge, so it's a lot more efficient now. But back then, when the merge was announced, all the worlds kind of checked each other out, and they started making, deals with each other. And so when the merge actually happened, two alliances, two of the bigs and the other two were at conflict already. They started trying to block each other. They started trying to, thwart each other, doing presidents and stuff like that. So it was kind of a mess. And it was, it later came out, as we as time went on and everybody kind of got to know each other, everybody thought that everybody else was doing background deals with each other. So they didn't really know that, everybody wants to get along. And really the true purpose of a merge is to make this nation stronger for cross nation events, so that when you compete against everybody else, all the other worlds, you need to be the strongest possible. And so you can't make those deals with specific worlds and leave other worlds out, because you're going to burn bridges there and, kind of have some of the hiccups that we had in World 29. So it's kind of funny to see that.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing about this game is it kind of mimics the real world in a way. It's a little microcosm, little community, and it's got a semblance of government, whether that be some sort of republic or democracy, dictatorship. It's got its own little mini government. But the difference between this game and reality is quite simply, this is a game, and it's also a war strategy game. So you're going to have rules, and people are going to seem like dictators, and these rules are going to be designed by the people that are spending the money. And it's almost akin to real life too, right? You have these little C20s coming up wanting to say your rules are terrible, blah, blah, blah. That's like a cashier at McDonald's walking up to the president of the United States or a general in the military and telling them their strategies and laws are garbage. I mean, we don't care. And that sounds very harsh, but it really is dictated by the spenders. And last night, we had a little chat with a few people, and I think it was Goat from Nation 151 said something that kind of deserves repeating. And I'll paraphrase best I can. Players spending and fighting that war will allow the other players to peacefully exist, as long as they follow those rules and don't cause us extra headaches and, feed points. Once those spenders have to spend more money to make up the deficit, all gloves are off. And that's when we get mad. That's why we make these rules.
Yeah. So that's a great point. So rules are really, really important in agreeing on rules. I mean, every time I kind of check out some of Woody's videos, I see him killing farms all the time because they're outside of the rules. So when you guys get together, it's definitely essential to establish, what cities can have as far as troops, what city levels are considered farms, that kind of stuff. Sorry, Kitchy, what were you saying?
No. I'm just thinking. I'm just having a moment where Matty was saying dictatorship and stuff. I think it's also good to know that whoever gets into that position is comfortable to be called that, and and to know that other than being called that, they also have that really big responsibility to enforce those rules, and whatever rules they should be across the board. It shouldn't be, there shouldn't be loopholes that other people can pick and poke and have excuses for some and not for others. So yeah, I think that's something that whoever is leading the nation as well should have that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I'm kind of heading this up for my nation, and I can tell you a screw up on my part about the rules is I've got Great One on my team, right? Well, this man never gathers. He doesn't have farms or anything, so I don't think about telling him the rules. He doesn't really look in nation chat all that much, maybe a couple times a week. And well, we did a 24-hour purge, and he was just out there farming. And he got hit. Well, when he woke up in the morning, he got pissed and just started leveling people. And we were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. whoa, man. So it was a huge screw up on my part because I didn't think to communicate with him because he just doesn't gather, and just the one time that he did, man, it just, so that was a little bit of drama, but we smoothed that over fairly quickly. I think I'm sure there's some butthurt people out there though.
Yeah. So trust me, I think we all have those stories. So you get cities that are so big. If they fall outside of the rules, they're not going to really care. So what really needs to happen, you have to have your leaders really get in touch with these guys, calm them down, let them know, look, we've got to do it across the board. And that doesn't always happen, I know, and it definitely doesn't always happen in our world. But if number one, if you can't communicate the rules and get everybody to follow it, you're going to have issues. You're going to have civil wars. And number two, if you can't level with your bigs and let them know, look, guys, we established these rules. We got to apply it across the board. You're going to have to follow them. That typically doesn't end well. So that's definitely a challenge. And we've always had that challenge. And I don't think it's ever going away because it's the personality types. It's the people that you play with that are like, you're not going to dictate to me. And it's kind of crazy because the rules aren't really that bad. Like Lumber, just run over the rules that you guys are going to establish real quick. Cause I bet you they're not even, that far out of, craziness. I mean, it's got to be pretty simplistic, right?
How much time do you have left is the real question, right? So
Oh boy.
somebody asked me to do a summary in our merger talks, and then I think I wrote for like 3 pages, summary of rules. I'm the worst person to summarize rules. But along the line of rules, I will share something that I think is, many nations may do this, many nations may not. But if you don't do this, this is something you ought to consider. So what we have is a culture of rotating leaders, and we have a council alliance, right? This is going to sound, like democracy, but the idea is that you separate your nations or your alliances into battle alliances. Those are ones that are allowed to fight in void, and if you care about frenzy, in frenzy. And then those that are not, right? Meaning, and a battle alliance would be somebody that has a competent battle leader. They know how to fight. They know when to reinforce. They know when not to reinforce. And then you have fun alliances, right? Those can participate in other events, but let's say whether or not they can become a battle alliance really depends on kind of those levels and proving themselves in battle. All of these alliances participate in. We didn't have Viber before, so we just did it with the leaders. There would be 2 representatives. Leaders from each alliance would send a representative that would kind of communicate nation rules and decide on these topics. The battle nations will have 2 votes. The fun nations or fun alliances will have 1 vote. And everybody else that does not kind of fall into this rules and doesn't follow the nation rules. And those might be like, look, no city beyond these approved alliances can have troops above T4, right? So if you want to live, if you want to have fun, if you want to socialize, by all means do that. You cannot do so with a risk of putting up a bubble. So you can do as your merry way as long as you have T4 or below. So we follow this alliance and then everybody agrees on it, right? So it might take long. Democracy is not easy. It takes more time. But we haven't had a civil war and we hope we never do.
You said democracy is not easy. So are you guys definitely going to democratically handle this, or are you having like the strong leader take like a dictatorship role?
No, there is no dictator. It's all democratic. We rotate our R5 in our alliance, and most of our alliances has rotated in the past. So you just have the R4s go through it, then cycle every month. Every void, a new leader comes in.
So one of the things that I've run into, and I'd like to get your feedback on this, is so when the merge happens, the worlds come together. You're going to have some nations that are leaner than others, we'll say. they don't have a lot of fat. They don't have a lot of extraneous farm alliances and stuff like that. But when the merge happens, some of those lean nations are going to look at those fat nations and they're going to want to clean them up. So how do you guys typically, and just speak up, but how do you guys typically handle those worlds that come into your merge and they just don't care? They've got a great fighting alliance, but they've got so many buddies and other different alliances that you can't clean them up. So how do you guys go about doing that?
So
Poorly.
so
Sorry.
Civil War.
so the way that we did it, and it wasn't exactly. I mean, we're still actually doing it because we got matched with two huge farm nations. So when you first start the merger, obviously territory is the most important thing. You tell all the farm alliances you guys are not allowed to start an alliance or even put territory down or a haul down until the top whatever 3, 4, 5 has their territory. It can take a week or two.
Yeah.
So at that point they wait. You're gonna have people that try to be sneaky and steal, which you burn them. You just got to burn them. Period. There's no questions about it. But as for you just got to burn them. You got to set the rules early, and then you just got to burn them. And if you wait too long, like how we did, and I hate to say it, and I know 373 is listening, you're going to have the problems of, well, now we can't get rid of them.
That is key. I think World 30 actually suffers from it too. We were a huge. We had a lot of BP. We still have a lot of nation BP, a lot of it, and we didn't clean them out early. And we're definitely seeing some of the effects of that. Matty D, I think you were going to chime in. What were you going to say about yours?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so like I said, ours is a little bit different. So we had three, a number one alliance in each of the three worlds. Well, we basically handed over the keys to the kingdom to players that we didn't know, from another nation to run that alliance with the understanding that they've got to police their own, they've got to do this, if you do these things, you can be the R5 of this particular alliance. And so our different alliances are responsible for policing their own for the most part. I mean, during Purge, we've got to go around and double check things, but I think we've got a really good system in how it's working.
Wow, that is kind of interesting. So you guys kind of dictate who the R5 is?
Well, we didn't dictate it. We discussed it because, pre-merger, that alliance, you spend a lot of time, you spend a lot of money, gold building that guy up, and to just give that away to a player that you don't know, it's a big decision, and you don't want to do it, and give it to the wrong person. So we kind of sat and discussed, hey, who do we want to be the leaders of these alliances? And are they going to be on board with our nation's plans, and that type of thing.
That's, to me, that's kind of next level, Matty. That's like kind of getting the leaders on board on who should actually be leading each. I mean, it's smart, but it just seems like I haven't seen that before. Lumberg, are you guys kind of taking that same approach with your new merge?
No, I mean, I'm realizing, a lot more democratic than most other nations.
Yeah, and I'm not saying we're not democratic. Whenever we come up with a rule, I mean, all nations essentially have almost the same rules for the most part.
Yeah.
There's some tweaking here and there. So, we've got a nation leader chat in Discord that's got all the R5s and R4s. Any time I post a new rule, I will post it in there, ask for feedback. Some things don't translate properly, I'll make clarifications. And then after about 24 hours, and nobody said anything bad about it, then I'll post it as the official rule. And I'm generally doing one about every 3 days or so. Just because I don't want to just throw all these rules at people all at one time. But obviously some are more important than others, like, farms having T4 and lower troops, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. So, Do you guys actually establish, academies? I don't know about your worlds, but academies aren't really academies anymore. Really,
They're useless.
yeah, they're like just homes for alt accounts. But do you guys establish the mains, how many academies they can have, and all that stuff?
You should only have one. If you ever do have an academy, you should only have one.
Yeah, so we don't have any academies, and that's very specific. There are no academies. There are only main alliances, but the other alliances are kind of feeder alliances, right? So a lot of people want to be a number one, and we're constantly evaluating who do we want in number one. We track everything, so we're going to move people in and out between 1 and 2, or 1, 2, and 3, because 2 and 3 are kind of the same, for a sense, I guess. But everybody wants to be a number one in our world because we are the top dogs, and that's where you're going to have the most fun fighting. But it takes a lot to get there, and you've got to be very, very active. So I guess the rest of the world is kind of our academy in a sense.
Facts. But if you don't do it right away, it gets hard to do it. And that's coming from experience. Like we're sitting at like 85 people in our alliance, and like we want to get R32 in there, but he's loyal to ITA, so he won't come. And if he does come, he's got baggage. He's got other friends that want to come. Well, unfortunately, those other friends are people that drop bubbles. So it's you got to do it right away.
You kind of mentioned, Woody, that academies are useless. Do you guys have a big problem with academies right now?
Yeah. So when you go into the whole T4 rules about farms and stuff, you're gonna find the people will start hiding their cities, their farms, or their second cities in academies to the point where if they put like a number 2 alliance tag on it saying this is my alliance, don't touch it. Well, those people will start hiding their farms in there. They'll rename it so it doesn't say farm on it. And that's going to come into a big problem because, I mean, we all know if you're not at a certain, like for instance, us guys or anyone in this stream, if you're not past C34 yet, you're not useful in any kind of void or anything. You're pretty much a farm. Like let's be 100. You're pretty much a farm.
It depends on the player. I mean, I've got, like I said, we've got the top players in our number one, but we do have some C34s out there that we did not bring in number one just because, they're not that active. And I've even got a C30 in our alliance, but he is active. He's a spender. He kind of started late. So, he'll catch up eventually, but we take all of those things into consideration about, the actual person and what they do, not just their city level.
Right, and the kills, their stats, their kills and their losses, it'll show everything. That's all you need to look at is kills and losses, and it'll show you anything you need to know about that person.
Yeah, unless, they're building farms and just padding their kills by killing farms intentionally like some players do.
True.
Yeah, I've kind of seen that. Hey, Lumberg, you kind of alluded to something where you talked about, fun alliances. Do you guys make concessions for alliances that really aren't battle alliances? Maybe not even an academy, but they're fun alliances. Do you guys have a situation where you have that and you allow it?
Yes, we do, but it's similar to the concept that Matty, Woody, and the others were talking about, where they are places where you go to take a break, right? Save up on some items. It's the social aspect of the game. You have some friends in there, but they have responsibilities, right? They lose their alliance status and their vote if they fail to present an iron shield in void, right? So it's simple as that. And anybody that wants to get a taste for killing, you join one of the battle alliances, right? So it's a necessary system, because what we found is that you can go too far overboard in that number one alliance, let's say that Matty's talking about, you're not going to have people that are dying to join after a couple of months or years. And you need to keep people engaged in the game, right? This game, it's a lot of social aspect to it, right? A lot of us are here because we want to support each other and make friends. And, nobody wants to give money to Camel, but, we continue to do that. We continue to want to win, but there's a huge social aspect of it. So I think fun alliances are important, and that's the way we view them. But never for a moment, would they be allowed to, let's say, not kind of follow the rules and jeopardize the win.
So in our world, we establish something that doesn't always get followed this way, and it's a big problem of ours. But so essentially, our academies are supposed to be, what Lumberg just said. When you're playing in the mains, you're fighting, you're using up gold, you're using up speeds. You need to take a break sometimes. So jump down to an academy, let somebody move up from the academy to fill the main, and that gives you the chance to take a break. And the other piece of it that we do is during purges, we try to do 48-hour purges so that the academies can do the purge on the first day, right? So they get that taste for killing, so they get that excitement of fighting. Because truth be told, some people that play, they just want to kill monsters or kill zombies and do zombie uprise and just do events, but they really don't have that taste for actually fighting battles. So was one of the reasons why we allow the academies to kind of do that and kind of hopefully spark that. But then on the second day of purge is when the mains purge everyone, including the academies. But I think it works well, and I think it's a recipe that could be good, but it's hard to follow, because what ends up happening in our world is all the academies are essentially alt accounts for the mains. And if I could give any kind of advice to people, especially when you're getting into older nations, people quit, they give up their cities. After a while, you start inheriting a lot of cities. Not you specifically, but people start having a lot of alt accounts. Just give them away. Don't try to run 10 different cities in that world, because you're just kind of mucking it up for everybody else. So I really hate players that just have 20 different accounts and they're trying to keep track of them in different farms and different academies and different mains, and it really just makes things difficult.
Yeah, I saw a world last night that I think 3 of the top 5 players were accounts that one person acquired, and they were far and above better than all of the other accounts. Like it made no sense to me.
I have a question for Lumberg, and Lumberg and Matty might be able to answer this. So on your third merge, obviously Nation BP is a huge thing that's going to be an issue. Because now that you guys have been merged twice, you're going to be starting to get matched up with like Nation 30 and Nation 52, because now your Nation BP is matching theirs. Is that going to start to be an issue, being that those really old nations, the god nations, they might just walk over you guys because you guys are, newer? Is that going to be an issue? Because a lot of people that want these mergers, they don't understand that it can hurt you.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely say. I mean, I'm in the 5.524, right? Right after our merge, our voids and frenzies are in the 300s now, and it's not a problem for us just because of the way we're set up. But if you don't have a not so favorable merge, and you've just got this bloated BP, you are definitely outclassed, because the average player in those worlds is C34, whereas we're sitting at C31, C32, and that's just a huge difference.
That's huge.
Well, Lumberg, so your third merger, have you done the adding up of where all 3 of you guys now are going to be in one nation? What is your overall nation BP going to be compared to yours, SimpleJack? Is it going to be right there at the same, or at least relatively close? Because that's going to be you might start getting unfair matchups because of it.
I think
You
it's
know
the
what your
second merge.
what your BP is, Lumberg?
I don't. It's going to be high, but then it will come down. Woody, just to make sure, we are on our second merger. I talk about mergers enough to where you think we might be on our third, so I don't blame you. I will say that I've noticed a recent trend in the void matchups. So even before we had this merger announced, and I think in last void you'll notice a lot of the older and newer worlds got paired, right? I think like 30 got paired with 151. It used to be like 30 would only match with 1, 2, 33, 72, 99, these first world nations, right? So Camel has, I think, two things has happened, and Jack can speak a lot more to this, and Nikki can on 30 and 52, is that there's been a mass exodus of players from those nations just because if you think about it, a merger revitalizes spending, players, energy, and a lot of activity, and they're having fear of that. They have fewer matchups, and it's kind of stale. So in some ways, and Jack has alluded to this, that the fight style of the new nations is very different from the old ones. So we did actually have a void with 113, I believe, which is a twice merged nation versus we were a once merged nation. So huge difference in BP. And we started off really behind, like 4 billion points behind. But void is an area where it doesn't matter what your BP is, right? It matters what your discipline is. And some of the older nations, just haven't had to have discipline because they can just get by and power through it. The newer nations, it's kind of do or die. And so I think void is always an interesting matchup. You can almost match with anyone and win, right? BP doesn't matter. But some of these other things like global conquest, like let's say duel of domination, BP and average seed level absolutely matters. I think instead of focusing too much on kind of who you're matching with, it's kind of a challenge, right? So you always want a good opponent. You don't want an opponent that will reinforce with T4 as a C38, right? That is just ununderstandable. Like, why do you play this game, right? So you want a good opponent no matter who that is. That's kind of my view of it.
Yeah.
That should be bannable.
Yeah,
I don't want to see that.
Yeah, I mean that the whole T4 fighting style is just, I'll just say it'll never be on my channel.
So Woody and Lumberg, I've heard very vocal against this. I actually think it gives like some of the little guys something that they can concentrate on to do, because Woody and I kind of saw some tactics about stuffing as many Titans into one city. I think we saw as many as 17 different cities in one, and Lumberg explained it to me, and he showed me how it was done. But real quick backtrack. So Lumberg mentioned something that's really important. Whenever there's a merge happening, there is an excitement about that world. That is the absolute best time for your world. You have guys that can recruit. You pull in players from other worlds to your nation that's doing the merge, because people get excited about these merges, and people get excited about the optimism that new nation can be. Because like in our world, we're probably like 1.5 years, a year and a half since our last merge. I mean, it's it's getting lean. It's been a long time. Hopefully we get a merge soon, but it's difficult to compete with some of the nations that are getting these merges now, so that they start to collect a lot of players from other worlds, which really helps. I mean, that is something that goes unspoken a lot, but it really does help a nation to do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of nations actively recruiting, and very well, I might add. But one thing, back to Woody's point, let's say you are on your third merge. You have to realize there's a ton of worlds that are all going to be crammed into one. You've really got to take a hard look at your player base and start killing people, because there's only so much room in the world. I mean, it's a crappy thing, but you've got to start, just really nipping that stuff in the bud and getting rid of players.
Yeah, that's one of our rules is kind of going off what you just said, that academies and mains are the only alliances that are allowed to collect gold, right? Because the gold mines are very limited, and if everybody collected, that would take away from the mains and academies. So if you're not part of that group and you're gathering, you can be killed. So
Yeah. Another thing that's ridiculous in our world is, right after our merge, monster phase and gathering phase, just gathering in general, it is a nightmare. Like, I don't even do it because I can't even find a mine or anything. Like, it's ridiculous.
Agreed.
yeah.
But I mean, eventually it'll work itself out as people leave and whatnot. But it'll never go back to where it was pre-merger.
Probably another point that I was going to make is, then Lumber kind of hinted at it, was the old worlds, had a lot of merges, and I think Camel's strategy now is to try to catch, the 100s and beyond up with some of the old worlds, because right now, if you look at World 30, World 52, World 2, and World 1, there really isn't a group that we can merge with, because if you merge us with, an older world, it could be really bad for that old world, or it could be vice versa. But so I think Camel, what they're trying to do is speed up the process for some of the newer worlds to try to get them up to, the same level as the old worlds. And to another point that I'll make is some of the new worlds have way better strategies. I think Lumberg pointed this out, because they had to learn how to fight using strategy, versus some of the old big worlds where they literally just brute strength themselves into victory every single void. So I've, I can't remember the worlds, but some of the worlds I've fought that were newer definitely had a lot better strategies as far as trapping and Titan trapping and counter attacks and stuff like that. So it speaks well to the new worlds that they really have adapted and are able to challenge really strong nations.
Yeah, I mean, we learn lessons from you guys, right? I mean, you get on Discord, you kind of see what works and what doesn't. You just learn over time. The game's 4 years old, so these newer nations are actually at an advantage because there's so many resources online. Like even this podcast, this podcast wasn't available 4 years ago to discuss what happens during a merger.
That's true. Because a lot of the new players, even from the 700-800 worlds, when you talk to them and they're trying to get into an older nation, they already have an idea of the rules. That's the first thing that they ask. It's like, are there rules in your nation? What are the rules in your nation? Are they stricter? Are they not as strict? Do you have, P4 rules for farms? Do you have, a BP rule? Or do you have kills, kills and loss ratio kind of rule? So that wasn't, I don't think I've ever heard of that before, like, a year or 2 years ago. But now it's almost like that's the first point of contact after trying to figure out if you're an active world or not. So I think that's good all around. So I don't know why we're still having issues as to when we try and purge and enforce rules, why we still get like um hesitation or resistance when we try to enforce rules.
So there was a nation. I'm not going to say their nation because I don't want to expose them. They had a rule to where you get 2 strikes, meaning your bubble drops. You get 2 strikes, and after that second strike, no matter if you're a C38 to C1, you get zeroed out by the whole nation. So that rule, I think, would benefit if people put that into their nation because it will show more discipline. What you're supposed to be doing. I mean, you get zeroed out right there if you're a C38. There's thousands and thousands of dollars you just watch go bye bye in like 20 seconds. So
Uh,
I like that rule. It's a big rule. It would take the whole entire nation to agree to it. But that shows a lot of discipline. Lots of points not going to be taken away.
Well, I'm just gonna say I'm pretty sure Nation 52 is very proud of that rule. And
I didn't want to say the nation.
no, I'm. They are proud of that rule, and
Yeah.
they are happy to have that. So
Yeah.
I don't think there's any reason why you couldn't say that.
Well, I didn't want to expose. I don't know if they wanted me to say it or anything. You know how some nations are. They don't want their secrets told, and I understand.
No, I mean, I think Nikki said something to that point on the last podcast. So, but if
Gotcha.
you talk to any of those guys, they're proud of that rule.
And that dude, I think that should be one of the rules in the game. Period. At any nation.
Woody, I don't think 373 can zero Ram or Youngblood, even if his bubble drops. But just you need to put an asterisk by that rule.
That guy is never bubbled.
And he doesn't need to.
Yeah.
Facts. That is facts. It's like Sayaz. He doesn't need a bubble. You try to take him on, good luck.
Well, and that's something that's a bigger trend in the newer worlds. You know, there are a lot of, I'll just call it ridiculous spenders, than there are in the older worlds. Like you just see a lot more of them there. I don't know if this is people that played, you know, in an older world and then said, you know what, I'm going to go dominate this world or what. But there's the BP is just ridiculous on some of these brand new nations.
Yeah, I've seen what's the highest you've seen now? I think 450 is the highest I've seen.
It's 600 now.
Yeah,
Oh,
I see
man.
600 as well. Wait, didn't I just hear like 2 weeks ago someone that was like close to 800?
Yeah,
I don't know.
What?
We had one guy, or in this low 600s, he recruited 3.5 billion, which was
Wow.
100 million BP in one day.
Jeez.
Lumber, do the math.
Yeah, I was going to say Lumberg. Is that even possible? I mean, well, I guess
Yeah.
they could use gold all day long, but
Yeah, nothing but gold. It's possible.
Yeah, I think he must have hired somebody to do that recruitment.
Yeah, no, he had to hire a personal assistant to click the button. I mean,
wow. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, here's the thing: a lot of people don't understand is like these newer nations, they're just strictly buying. Where all of us older nations that got some big BP, they stopped recruiting, they stopped spending, or not saying to stop spending, but they just stopped recruiting because they know what's right around the corner, and they're saving those recruits for when it happens, to where they can jump up and grab 5 fleets worth right off the bat.
yeah, but the players we're talking about, this does not matter to them. They're gonna grab 5 fleets worth that first day. Like there's something in the water in these newer nations. They basically compete against each other in duel of dominance. Like they will see who can spend the most money. You will see it in the billions of points spent just because two people are going back and forth.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
definitely
these
see
would be
that.
the players. Yeah, there's a lot of players in newer nations that would, place a gold shield or a gold buff on the whole, like the alliance, just because they can. So, it's like, why not?
Yeah, no, I mean they're in just a point. They're trying to outscore in points, even though
Mhm.
go ultra shields are not the best use on small players, but
Yes.
they're just flexing how much money they have.
Well, even when we had 457 for like 3-4 events, they weren't fussed about the alliance per se. They were more fussed about lead god still not beating their number one player with regards to like personal score. Like they don't they're not fussed that they lost as a nation. They're more like, well, this player, our player, still trumped your player. And it's like, okay, sure. But I think to them it is more just a personal, um, yeah, a personal preference of I'm beating you individually.
Yeah, I definitely see like spenders that like to beat, do the individual scores. One thing that I need to point out with the newer nations that it must really suck for them because when I was coming up through the cities, I had to sit at C30 forever for months. I had to sit at C34, C35 forever for months, and then C38 because when I was in the game, they didn't have levels above that. So when you maxed your level, you were sitting there, and everybody else had a chance to catch up with you. In these newer nations, you've got these guys that are huge spenders. They could, conceivably hit C38 really fast, and the normal spender or the normal non-spender is still going to be, a really, really small city. So I can imagine that causes a lot of disparity between, some of the cities to where people just kind of get beat up all the time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I calculated a few months ago. I think the fastest you can get to C38 is like 6 or 7 months or maybe it's 8 months if you buy every single pack of uranium and the specials.
I know I can't do that.
But you're gonna pay because you're gonna pay the ridiculous prices for uranium. Most of us know the best bet is just buy the first pack or something like that. But when you see these people doing what they do, it makes you want to press that button even more than you do.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah,
People want to.
Go ahead, Woody. Sorry.
I'll say people want to keep up to the top spender, or at least look like they are keeping up to it, and be a paper tiger.
Yeah, the paper tiger thing.
You got it, and we're seeing that a lot. And some people are just pushing city level to C38, and they may be a C38 with 900 attack and 30% damage reduction, and I can beat them with Titans alone, and my Titans aren't even that strong. I mean, it's
Yeah, but I think that came from the old way of making cities, like get there faster, quicker, so you can actually open up the troop levels that you need for that specific level. So they and then just work backwards from there. But now we know that regardless of whether you are a 34 or a 36, that what's important is your equipment, your officers, your titans, and now warplanes. So it's not really the city level anymore.
no, absolutely not. I mean, when I was a C34, I mean, I was beating C38s in the uranium mines regularly. I mean, they just, as you guys say, there's a lot of them are just paper tigers.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people level up, and Kitchy's point is kind of correct to some extent. Like you level up so you can unlock those troops, and then you kind of backfill. But the smart players really do kind of build that solid city, regardless of level. Titans now are key. Warplanes are key. Even zombies, but a lot of these paper tigers, they just get that level, and you look at their other stats, they're kind of lacking, and it really I think that's kind of one of those things where people want to show strength, but they can't really display it when they're fighting.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys, we're coming up on an hour. Go ahead, Lumberg.
I was going to bring this. I wouldn't do justice if I didn't share this thought process on mergers, but one of the obvious yet hard to achieve hidden truths in merger is your success as a nation and in the merger really depends on whether or not you have successfully, before you've come to the table with that first merger in your nation, integrated your alliances to form an international alliance, right? So it's really important. The natural concept of the game is that, look, it's easier to play in your own time zone. It's easier to play in your language. But as a nation, if you care about winning, you will kind of get past that comfort zone and form an alliance that will be international in nature, because then you have those ambassadors, those diplomats that can reach out to all the different other alliances. And honestly, the most nations that succeed have an alliance that doesn't have to be a super alliance, but does have some place where everybody that is because you can't pick who joins your nation, right? We're not a lock nation. You're not limited to your nation, and who you merge with is all determined on who starts into that nation at what point in the globe, right? So you have spenders, you don't have spenders, and you have people from all over your heavy spenders are still going to be in those 4 groups that I talked about. But being able to bring that together, I think if you're considering a merger, if you're coming up with a merger, first fix kind of your own backyard and try to bring everybody together, because you're not going to achieve that suddenly in a merger. That would be my, kind of hidden gem or hidden advice for mergers.
Yeah, I've got one more little note to add on to that. And Lumert has a really good spreadsheet on this, but mergers are typically done in cycles. So there's a range of nations, and once they get to your range, that's when you merge. Now, there are some outliers there, but for the most part, that is what happens. So we know we're not getting a merge or the next set of merges for probably 3 months because of global conquest. So what can people do to, I don't want to say speed up their merger, but make sure that they're early in that cycle? Is you've got to go ahead and implement all of those farm rules, get your nation BP down as much as possible. And this is the crappy part, but you really need to consolidate your world down to 2 or 3 alliances. Like, you've got to get rid of the fat, because once you come together, you're going to have to fit 6 to 9 alliances worth of players in the world. So it's either you clean them up now or you clean them up after the merger, and it's a lot more work. So get started now, and just, you got to cut the fat.
I agree. 100% agree with that. So, and one thing I was asked, and I know this is a little bit off topic of a merger, but since we were talking about city level, I was asked about at what point do you think is good to go to the next city level, and you can check the little chat that I posted. On average, and this is just my thought, you guys, and I would actually love to hear you guys' opinion. A C34 should be around 600 LRA or MRA. C35 600 to 800. C36 800 to 1,000. C37 1,000 to 1,200. C38 1,200 and up. Like on majority of these cities that you see, that's usually right around when you want to, when you get to that point, go to the next level. If you're not around there, don't, because you're going to be a paper tiger and you're not going to be able to hold your own. I mean, the melee HP, that's a big, obviously you got to kind of match that or at least get somewhat close as well. But can you guys touch on that and see if that's right about average to be
our world? Like, so our alliance, we've got some C35s, but essentially, to answer your question, our alliance is your LRI has to be 1,000 or above, and to be an NX3, and so we don't really have that quote unquote paper tiger syndrome. But I guess though, because our world is so old, that people have had a chance to move up and get it up, because there really aren't that many C34s in our world that are viable at all. Matty, do you have anything?
Oh, I could say a lot, but our podcast would continue for another 2 hours. So I think that's a separate topic maybe for another day, and kind of finish up the merger talk if there's anything left.
Yeah, yeah. No, but to answer your question, Woody, yeah, we don't really have any unwritten rules about when, cities should go up. I think for the most part, everybody kind of trusts everyone else to do it, but it is kind of a problem that people try to level up without getting their stats up. And I personally just haven't seen it, but like I said before, it might be just because my world's so old that people have had a long time to really.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, your world, you were waiting on the next upgrade. So you had, like you said, you had those people had time to catch up.
Yeah.
Now, you can have one person C38 and the rest of the world is averaging like C24. I mean, that's just the reality in some of these later worlds.
It's true. True.
All right, guys, let me wrap this up. Let me go around the room. Tell me what you guys think are some of the key indicators. And I know because Camel never really indicated exactly what constitutes, a city or a world getting a merge. But in your opinion, what are some of the key attributes that Camel's looking for to pull that trigger for a merge?
So I can boil that down to probably 5 things. The first one is going to be Chinese locked nations are going to get them early. This is just part of Campbell's model. I wish everyone would quit whining about it because there's nothing we can do as players outside of these nations. We just have to accept it is what it is,
Yeah.
right? Number two,
It is, yeah. Sorry, Matty.
Oh,
It is what it is because they have a lot of civil wars in those locked nations, so there are a lot of turnover, like player turnover, which is why they always have a merge. So
yeah, and that
yeah,
brings me to kind of point number two is you can have if you have a completely dead world. A lot of those Chinese locked nations are completely dead. And when I say dead, I mean like you've got 50 to 100 active players. That is just a dead world. Number three would be essentially your turn in the merger cycle. Like we talked about, we see merges in groups of nations. Maybe Lumber can post that spreadsheet in chat. It's really great. So there's definite trends and patterns that we see, with the vast majority of merges. And 4 would be spending. This is an obvious thing, but it's not just major spending, it's also minimal spending. We've seen some worlds merge that really set a budget for all their players, and they merged outside of their cycle just because of low spending. And then number 5, I mean, that's an obvious one. It's going to be VIP influence.
Yeah. So do you guys equate logins as part of that, or is that part of spending? Like I've heard people say that to stop logging in to try to influence Camel.
No, that may bring you earlier in once they reach your merger cycle.
Okay.
It.
see, I don't think their server counts. Like one player having 10, 15, 20, 50 different cities as one player. One city is one player to them. So if you're one of those nations that have one player that has 50 farms and they go all into those 50 farms, technically that's 51 players then. That's not just one player having 50 other farms and a main. It's 51 players. So I think that's where the disconnect is. Like they're not actually counting players per se. They're counting like how many times you actually go into the game with a different login.
So the way I explain like what you're saying is imagine like a heart monitor, you get that line, it beeps up, goes down, beeps up, goes down. So every time someone logs in, the bar goes up. the bar goes up. So if you're logging into 30 or 50 farms, you just move that bar up. And once you hit that certain point every single day, well, you're just eliminating your chance in that, in that aspect. I mean, you got to have multiple aspects going on, like Matty was saying, the spending, the VIP, multiple things happen, but like that is one of the factors. If you're logging into 50 farms per player, let's say you got 20 people and you got 50 farms, you just literally that's 2,000 people. They don't think you're a dead nation.
Well, it
Yeah,
depends
that's
on your farm troop rules too, because a dead nation can also be super low BP as well. You know, if you've got 50 active players and 250 farms, then your nation BP is going to be incredibly low.
congrats, Lumberg. Hit the button on C36. Congrats, man.
Nice, man. One more
Congrats,
thing.
Lumberg.
It
Congrats, Lumberg.
is kind of the impact or who you merge with. Generally, what we've seen, and this is generally not all the time, is you're going to see one strong world, one weak world, and one kind of middle of the road world. You know, there are exceptions outside of this rule.
Yes, you're one of those exceptions, Mr. 290% win rate worlds.
Yes. It is what it is. But, and what's going to decide whether you're a strong world, weak world, or a middle of the road world is going to be your overall nation activity and BP, your placement in events, your spending, all that stuff is going to play into it. And then there's also a little bit of VIP influence. I know every single person has VIP, is constantly bombarding them with, we want to be merged, and they get the generic response, we'll forward your request to the developers, blah, blah, blah. So when you find out that you are merging, VIP will tell you. I would not say give them a list of worlds you want to merge with, but rather a list of worlds you don't want to merge with. Because we know we all have those worlds that we hate, and we could not live with ourselves if we merged with them. So generally, telling them who you want to merge with doesn't work. But if you say, I don't want to merge with these worlds, then you make sure you don't.
Wow, that's some pretty heavy influence there.
Well, let me ask you about that, because there was multiple people that said that, like, they contacted VIP, and like you said, they asked which nations, and they literally said which nations they wanted to merge with, and they got it. And
Well-
versus like the older nations, we never had that opportunity to pick or even a choice to, hey, which one do you want to merge with? They never asked us that.
VIP influence can be a factor. I mean, that's I'll leave it at that. But the fact remains is every single VIP is going to be requesting merges. They're probably going to be listing specific nations. So they're hearing it from every single VIP, and it goes in one ear, out the other. Unless there are exceptions. There are different levels of VIP. You got a player that spends $2 million. They've got more clout than a VIP that spent $20,000.
So, Lumberg, I'm going to wrap this up. You've probably done the most research on mergers and all that stuff. Any last words? Anything else you want to fill in as far as mergers?
I think we've covered it pretty well. I mean,
I think so too.
I will just say, it's like if life gives you lemon, make lemonade, right? So make the best with what you can get. Ultimately, it's out of your control. And you'll be surprised at, the human element of things. So, doesn't matter what nations you get merged with, kind of approach it from that aspect, and you kind of make the most of it.
Get everybody on the same page, right?
I'll be honest with you. If there was a couple of nations I merged with, I would zero them all and quit. It's just unacceptable. And I know other players in the same boat as me. I mean, I know specific players I would have zeroed just because of stuff that they've said. But, so that's why I kind of encourage tell them who you don't want rather than, because that's possibly attainable rather than trying to say who you do want.
Well, it's also going to be a shorter list.
Yes.
Yeah, compared to the nations that you want to be merged with, it's going to be probably 5 or 6. So the nations that you don't want to be merged with, there's probably going to be only 1 or 2. So
Absolutely.
I think we should end with Matty sharing the list of nations he did not want to merge with.
Oh, I don't want to do that. That would be mean.
Wow.
They know who they are.
oh wow,
They know who they are.
Maddie wants 374.
No, I want 374 in void because there's a certain individual I would love to shut up.
oh
Oh boy.
All right, guys. All right.
lordy.
Very good. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. I'm going to wrap it up. It was a great show, great information. Matty D, Woody, thank you very much for coming on. Kitchy and Lumberg, of course. Thanks everybody. NikkiNikki as well. Thanks, and we will call it a show. Thanks very much.
See you guys.
All right,
Bye,
thanks,
guys.
guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.